Hi, welcome to One Word a Day. I'm Sophie, your pilot into the universe of Chinese. Today, I'm doing some modification of the format of presentation, because some of you mentioned that the window of my video is too small. So when sometimes I'm gesturing the meaning to kind of acting out what I mean, it's a little bit difficult to see. So I'm kind of adjusting the static word presentation, the text over here versus the visual of what I'm doing, the dynamic ratio on the screen. Hope you can give me some feedback if this way of presentation suits you better. Okay, last time we talked about 男儿本色, which is the Chinese way to say, to show the true color of your manliness. So today we continue with that kind of another detailed specific requirement or definition of what a man should be, how they should behave. Okay, 男儿有泪不轻弹. It's quite a long expression, 7 characters, even though some of Chinese poetic stanzas come in 7 character phrases. So it's a little bit, it forms it as if it came from the ancient expressions, at least to fit the format of 7 characters formation. But to me, it sounds like the word used here doesn't sound ancient. Okay, 男儿有泪不轻弹. Basically, it's saying that for a man, if you have sadness, you have something like emotions swelling up inside, you try to keep that within, suppress it. If you have tears you want to shed, you just don't. You don't lightly shed a tear. Okay, so that's the essence. And 男儿 again, 男 defined by working. This is the farming tool, the raking tool, and a farm field, box with the cross in the middle. So basically the field labor in a farm field. That's the definition of 男. 儿 is almost like the sun, you're looking like that. I translate it as cutie because it's you can regard it as gender neutral, but it could be a generic term for children. But a lot of times we pair it with, if it's 男儿, it's gendered, it's defined by the 男. And if we say 女儿, it means daughter, it means girl, unmarried daughter. So it's not an exact anonym for 男儿because 男儿is an adult, is a grown up. At least it's not measured in a dimension of if this man has a family or not. It's simply defined by the physical power, maturity level that can be working on a farm. And the cutie, this 儿, then in this context becomes gendered. Okay, it simply is a visual to representing, it's not a fully cultured human, which is just this part, but with a little bit of, unruly hair on top of the head. So that's how children will look like. Okay, 有, we have 3 finger hand symbol, and then we have this omega sign looking with 2 strokes in the middle, and that shows almost the texture of meat. So this full omega with the stripes inside, that's our meat symbol. So meat next to hand means you have meat, you have protein, you have a major food nutrient back then. Because I would imagine this character came from almost like a hunter-gatherer society, when hunting is not guaranteed to have success, right? So at the end of the day, you may not have the catch of the day, but gatherer is more likely to happen. Plants don't move. You can just go out and search and gather, right? So meat, then this catch from live animals becomes a major have back then. So that's the definition in the language and stay with us till today. Okay, tears. This is, you can see, just the contemporary tears, okay, because there's no ancient tears the classical Chinese rendering of tears, how it puts together. So even though we can find this water sign, that's the ancient water sign, almost looking like a stream, right? With the main stream uninterrupted and the side streams closer to the banks of the river, that's more likely to be interrupted. So total 5 strokes to make up this river. Currently, right now, it looks like a river, but eventually got abstracted into the water, like what's within the water channel. And then the eye symbol, like contemporary, is simply this little bit of vertical standing box with 2 horizontal lines. That's the eyeball. But we know humans, our eyes are more horizontally expanding. So the more likely depiction of the eyeball looks like this. Ancient Chinese do have this eyeball depiction. And eventually, I guess, for the efficiency of space, because this takes horizontal space, which is more, I guess, more precious, because characters are next to each other, right? So they go horizontally. We space our reading, our text in horizontal way. So horizontal is, in a sense, more precious space or property on your 2D plane on a reading text, right? So eventually this horizontally lane got verticalized and becomes like an eyeball kind of verticalized like that. So water plus eye. So water comes from the eye. That's the definition of tears. How thoughtful. Okay, not this negation we came across multiple times. So till today, I would say it's depicting like a drapey part is like a bird, and this probably the beak of the bird is a little bit stretch. Okay, and then a horizontal line on the top. Normally, that's the skyline. That's the furthest your vision can go if you look upward, and so that depicts the bird keep flying up toward the sun, presumably, or the sky is the limit, and then the bird refused to go down, and that's the origin of negation. I know it's a little bit stretch. Lightly came from this vehicle symbol, and the vehicle came from the wheel. The wheel, circular with spokes inside, and going through the axis with 2 stoppers on each side so that the wheel doesn't fall off. And ancient times, the wheels, it's not as like in contemporary living, right? We travel lots of times. It's automobile. We have to travel far on wheels. That becomes the norm. But in ancient times, wheels were not that commonly used in our daily life for transportation purpose. And besides, ancient times, people hardly transport or travel to anywhere. And if they go, they ride on a horse, right? So vehicle back then mostly used in a wartime. And if they do use in public transportation, that when paired with the right side, it serves as a sound maker and depicting lightweight type of vehicle. Probably there were back then the inventions of vehicle making, that some vehicles are more, like at least in the weight dimension, more efficient. That makes you travel more efficiently. And so this is the lightweight vehicle origin. So this lightweight is a little bit hard to see, but the right side originally came from underground water, right? We can see this is ground level, the water, and then this 2 horizontal lines connected with vertical line is the sign for craftsmanship. So that's a human architecture. There are human man-made structure underground. So probably that's for, I don't know, like making a well to reach out to underground water. We don't exactly know, but that become part of the language and eventually paired with the vehicle sign to mean the lightly traveled, the light-weighted vehicle. And eventually that vehicle, the major defining character got lighter. And then this light combination, this light character carried on. And eventually it can be light for any kind of things. Doesn't have to be vehicle anymore. Okay, Tan, I translate this shed, but in our language, a lot of times this tan means this plucking motion. And this plucking motion came from arrow shooting because, again, just like the vehicle, oftentimes used in wartime, this arrow shooting, not only in hunter-gatherer, just hunting for food purpose, a lot of times that became a weapon as well. So this plugging the bow on the air and shooting out the arrow, right? So that's the main depiction here. So this is the bow, okay? The arrow is supposed to like sit on here horizontally. And the right side is the sound maker with two mouse symbols on top. That means kind of a loud speaking. And then you can see here, this structure also kind of a circle with a spoke in the middle, but it's half-sided. It doesn't have the completion of the car, the vehicle back then on wheels on the axis with two sides of stoppers up there. Here is only one side. So I would imagine this was used back then probably as a single wheel, simple vehicle that only have one side stopper. And also it could be because there are two mouse symbols on top of it. And if draw out everything, it becomes like a little bit crowded. So people by this structure may infer this is implying that, even if it's not fully drawn. So again, this is for the efficiency or economy of the space. And then the mouse symbol over there, in a few episodes ago, I came across this and I would inherit that imagination because I don't have a good explanation of how this character then mean either loud because there are two mouths as a loud speaking, or grand because here this character with a vehicle, oftentimes in wartime, only the higher rank officials standing up high and then can direct, right? Almost like a wartime frontline general that gives orders to how to maneuver the troops, the ground troops, the foot soldiers into the correct positions, right? So these two mouses next to the vehicle is the order passer or announcer. They have to make it loud so the people in the army, military can follow the instructions. So that's my reading. That's why this character on the right side means grand because of the importance in the military sense that it's the order, the brain, so to speak, the brain and signal sending, the order giving component in a wartime. So that's singled out as important. And eventually this paired with, because this is military, right? And this is a weaponry, paired together, it means, that means almost like a bullet. Because we often pair with done like a single small ejectiles, and here tan is an action, it's not an object. So this tan simply means to shoot up the arrow. So arrow was not shown here visually, only the bow was shown here. And here is wartime order giving, kind of at the brain of the military at the wartime, and then they are the shooting arrows next to that. Probably that's what. Okay, I have to come up. Sorry, I cannot make up a better explanation. But the whole expression 男儿有泪不轻弹 means young man. Probably there is a progress or the development in a boy growing into man, right? And then they will come to this point when emotionally they are taught or disciplined or culturally conditioned to behave in a way that, okay, as a child, as a boy, like you have the liberty to cry, to express emotionally, to throw a tantrum, right? But when it comes to a point when the expectation of you is you become the age to work in a farm as a labor. You have the responsibility to carry for your family, right? Then that's the moment when if you have emotions that worthy of tears, you're not going to cry it out. You're not going to lightly flicker it around. So 弹 shed tear, almost like I also have the visual of a flick a tear away from your face. So the English comparison, where your boys don't cry, this movie's title, even if 男儿 is more like a young adult role here, it's not exactly boys who is still like in a coming of age, are still looking for his or their pathways. So that's Chinese expression 男儿有泪不轻弹. Cash into the currency thinking about one word a day with Sophie. See you another day.